There is a version of you that walks into a room and the entire energy shifts, not because you said anything, not because you did anything, just because you showed up. And somewhere deep inside you, you already know that version exists. You felt it before, maybe just once, maybe in a brief flash. That moment where everything aligned, where you felt completely at home in your own skin, where you didn't apologize for taking up space, where you didn't shrink, didn't overthink, didn't perform. You were just fully, completely, unapologetically yourself. And in that moment, people were drawn to you like gravity, like you were the center of something they couldn't explain. And then something happened. Life happened. Opinions happened. Comparison happened. And slowly, quietly, that version of you got buried. But here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. It didn't disappear. It's still there, right now. Underneath every fear, underneath every self-doubt, underneath every time you've talked yourself out of your own greatness, that version of you is still alive. And today we're going to go find it. Because the question isn't whether you're capable of being magnetic. The question is why you keep choosing not to be. Let's start with something most people never want to admit. The reason people aren't obsessed with you right now has nothing to do with your looks, your money, your status, your connections, or your circumstances. None of that. The real reason is simpler and more uncomfortable than any of those things. It's because you are not obsessed with yourself, not in the shallow, narcissistic way that the word obsessed might make you think. I mean obsessed in the way a craftsman is obsessed with their work. Obsessed in the way an athlete is obsessed with their performance, obsessed in the way someone who truly loves themselves shows up every single day and says, I am worth investing in. I am worth protecting. I am worth fighting for. That kind of obsession. When you carry that energy, something happens to the people around you. They feel it. They can't name it, but they feel it because the world responds to how you feel about yourself, always, without exception. Think about someone you've met, maybe once, maybe years ago, who you still think about, who you describe as just having something, some quality that made them impossible to ignore. You've probably spent time trying to figure out what it was. Was it their appearance? Maybe, partially. Was it their humor? Possibly. Was it their success? Sometimes. But if you're honest with yourself, it wasn't any one of those things. It was the way they carried all of those things or none of those things and still seemed absolutely certain that they deserved to be in the room. That certainty, that quiet, unshakable knowing that they were enough. That's what you were drawn to. That's what everyone is always drawn to. And here's the brutal truth. That quality is not something you're born with. It's not something life gives you. It's something you choose every single morning. You either wake up and decide that you are someone worth being, or you wake up and wait for the world to decide for you. And the world, let me tell you, is very bad at recognizing your value. The world will overlook you if you let it. Every time. So let's talk about why you've been letting it. There's this story you've been telling yourself. It started so long ago, you don't even remember where it came from. Maybe someone said it to you. Maybe you watched someone you loved be treated like they didn't matter, and you absorbed that lesson without knowing it. Maybe you fail once, badly in front of people, and you decided that failure meant something permanent about who you are. Whatever the origin, the story is the same. You are not quite enough, not quite smart enough, not quite attractive enough, not quite interesting enough, not quite successful enough, just slightly beneath the bar. And the cruelest part of that story is how reasonable it sounds when it's playing in your own head. It doesn't sound like abuse. It sounds like realism. It sounds like being grounded. It sounds like not getting your hopes up. But let me tell you what it actually is. It's a cage you built for yourself out of other people's words, other people's standards, other people's limitations. And you've been living in that cage so long that the bars have started to feel like walls and the walls have started to feel like home. And today I'm asking you to walk out, because the truth, the real truth that nobody can argue with, is that the limits you believe in are not real. They are not physical. They are not genetic. They are not written anywhere in the laws of the universe. Just thoughts, and thoughts can be changed. The moment you decide to change the story, everything else starts to change with it. Not overnight, not magically, but directionally, irreversibly, because direction matters more than speed. You don't need to transform in a day. You just need to start moving in the right direction and refuse to stop. Now, let me talk about something that's going to sting a little. You've been blaming your environment for your energy. You've been saying things like, if my life was different, I'd show up differently. If I had more money, if I had better opportunities, if people around me were more supportive. And look, I'm not dismissing any of that. Some of those experiences were genuinely painful, genuinely unfair. I'm not telling you your struggles weren't real. They were real. But here's what I need you to understand. Your past is a description, not a prescription. It describes where you've been. It does not prescribe where you're going. The people who become magnetic almost never had it easy. What made them magnetic wasn't the life spared them. It's that they refused to let their hardship become their identity. They took the pain and turned it into posture, into presence, into power. And you can do the same thing, starting now. There's a concept that I want to give you, and I think it will change everything. It's the idea of self-sourced validation. Most people are running around in a constant state of emotional hunger. They need people to like their posts. They need their partner to reassure them. They need strangers to notice them. And because that need is so loud inside them, it leaks out. People can feel it. And the uncomfortable truth about neediness is that it repels the very thing it's reaching for. When you need someone's approval, you are telling them without words that their opinion of you is more valuable than your opinion of yourself. Nobody is ever truly attracted to someone who values themselves less than everyone else does. It doesn't work that way. It has never worked that way. The moment you start sourcing your value from within, from your own standards, your own integrity, your own vision, the entire dynamic shifts. You stop being a question that needs answering and you become a statement, a full sentence. Full sentences are compelling. Incomplete sentences make people uncomfortable. Be the full sentence. This is why discipline is the most underrated form of self-love in existence. I want you to really sit with that. When you choose discipline, when you wake up early, when you do the workout, when you finish the work, when you keep the promise you made to yourself, you're doing something that almost nobody talks about. You're building a body of evidence that you are someone who can be trusted. And the most important trust in your entire life is not the trust other people have in you. It's the trust you have in yourself. Because when you trust yourself, when you know through repeated, consistent action that you are someone who follows through, you walk differently. You speak differently. You sit in a room differently. That quiet confidence, that unshaken certainty, it's not arrogance. Arrogance is loud because it's covering for insecurity. Genuine confidence is quiet because it doesn't need to announce itself. It simply is. And people feel it the way they feel warmth when they walk into a room from the cold. They can't explain it, but they move toward it. So, when's the last time you kept a promise to yourself? Not to your boss, not to your partner, to yourself. Because that gap between the promises you make and the ones you keep is exactly the size of the confidence you're missing. Every broken self-promise is a withdrawal from your self-trust account. Every kept self-promise is a deposit. Start making deposits. Start small. That's not weakness. That's strategy. Drink water when you wake up. Make your bed. Spend 30 minutes on something that matters to your future. Small, consistent actions compound into character. And character, real character, the kind that radiates from you without trying, is what makes people obsessed. Not your highlights, your consistency. The world is full of people who are impressive occasionally. The ones who are magnetic are the ones who show up for themselves even when nobody's watching, especially when nobody's watching. Let me talk about how you talk to yourself, because this might be the most important piece of everything we're covering. You have a voice inside your head that runs constantly, and most people have never stopped to question whether that voice is telling them the truth. Most people treat it like it's an authority, some neutral narrator just describing reality, but it's not. That voice is a product of everything you've experienced, everything you've been told, every failure you've absorbed, every criticism you've internalized. It has a bias, a heavy, distorted bias toward your inadequacy. And if you wouldn't let a stranger follow you around all day saying the things your inner voice says to you, then why are you letting yourself say it? You would walk away from a person who told you that you're not good enough, that you're going to fail. You would end that relationship immediately. But you've been in a relationship with that voice your entire life, and you've never once told it to stop. Today, that changes, not by suppressing the voice, but by responding to it differently. When it says you can't, you say, watch me. When it says you're not ready, you say, I'll figure it out as I go. You retrain the narrator, one thought at a time. Here's something I want you to understand about people who seem to have that magnetic, irresistible quality. They are not chasing. They do not chase people, opportunities, or validation. Not because they don't care, they care deeply, but because they understand a fundamental truth about human psychology. The thing that moves away is always more interesting than the thing that runs toward you. When you are so fully invested in your own growth, your own purpose, you naturally stop chasing, not as a strategy, as a byproduct. You become so busy building something real that you genuinely don't have time to orbit around people who aren't choosing you. And that energy, the energy of someone who is moving forward with or without your company. Din de auke is one of the most attractive forces on earth. It makes people want to keep up. It makes people afraid to lose you. They know where you're going and you're going there regardless. Let's talk about self-respect, because this is the thing that most changes how others treat you. Self-respect is not about being difficult. It's about knowing your own non-negotiables and actually honoring them. Most people say they have standards, but when those standards get tested, when keeping that standard costs them something, most people fold. They compromise. They tell themselves just this once, or I'm probably being too sensitive. And every single time they fold, they send a message to their own nervous system. You are not worth protecting. And after enough of those moments, the body believes it. The posture drops. The voice softens in ways that weren't voluntary. The eyes lower before they should. Not because those things were consciously chosen, but because the body is simply reflecting the truth that the mind has accepted. Self-respect is not a feeling. It's a practice, a series of daily decisions to honor the things you said you value. And when you practice it long enough, it stops being an effort and becomes an atmosphere that follows you everywhere you go. Here's a truth that might be the hardest thing I say today. Some of the people in your life right now are comfortable with the current version of you because the current version of you does not threaten them, does not challenge them. And when you begin to change, when you start setting standards, when you start walking taller, when you start saying no, some of those people will push back. Some will say, you've changed, as though that's an accusation. Some will try to pull you back into old patterns, old smallness, because your smallness made their smallness comfortable. And this is where your commitment gets tested, not by strangers, by the people closest to you. And I want to be very honest with you. Not everyone who loves you is capable of supporting your growth. That is not their fault. It is also not a reason to stop growing. You cannot let anyone else's ceiling become your floor. The people who are meant to be in your future will celebrate your becoming. The ones who can't handle it were always meant to be left behind as gently as possible, but behind nonetheless. This is why your environment matters more than almost anything else in your development. You are an average not of your intentions or dreams, but of the people you spend the most time with, the conversations you have daily. If everyone around you is complaining, you will complain. If everyone around you is settling, you will settle. You have to be ruthlessly intentional about your inputs. Spend time around people who are building things, becoming things. Seek out environments where the bar is higher than where you currently are. Because when you consistently spend time where your current level is the floor and not the ceiling, your baseline rises without forcing it. Growth becomes the norm. Stagnation becomes uncomfortable, and you start naturally becoming someone who raises the energy in rooms rather than draining it. Let me say something about vulnerability because it's been misunderstood. There's a version of it that's really just oversharing, unloading pain on anyone who'll listen and calling it authenticity. That's not vulnerability. That's desperation wearing vulnerability's clothes. Real vulnerability is strength. It's having the courage to show someone who you actually are, not to get their sympathy, but because you trust yourself enough to know that your real self is worth knowing. It's saying, I don't know without apologizing. It's saying this matters to me without shielding it behind sarcasm. Real vulnerability is the most magnetic thing in the world because it is the rarest. Everyone is pretending. The person who stops pretending stands out completely. And people who are lastingly obsessed with someone are always obsessed with the person who let them see something real. Now, let's talk about how you carry yourself physically, because this gets underestimated. The body and the mind are in constant conversation, and the way you hold your body is telling your brain something about who you are. Slow down. Literally, physically slow down. Slow your walk, slow your speech. Let silence exist without rushing to fill it. Breathe from your belly. Keep your head level. Make eye contact that is steady, not searching. These are not tricks. These are the physical expression of someone who trusts that their presence is welcome and what they're about to say is worth hearing. When your body sends those signals consistently, your brain starts to believe them. Confidence is physiological. It lives in your posture, in your breathing, in the pace at which you move, and you can start changing it right now without waiting for anything external to change first. Let me give you a simple framework to apply to everything going forward. Ask yourself in any situation, what would someone who loves and respects themselves do here? Because love and self-respect produce the right answer almost every single time. They would not stay in the conversation that drains them. They would not apologize for needs that are legitimate. They would not shrink their truth to manage someone else's comfort. They would not accept treatment that they wouldn't offer to someone they loved. And they would not spend energy trying to make someone see their value who has chosen not to look. Someone who loves themselves knows their value and spends their energy among people who already see it. That is not arrogance. That is wisdom. And it is the foundation of every genuinely magnetic life. I want to talk about purpose because there's a version of magnetism that is purely surface level, the kind that comes from grooming and social skills. And then there's the kind that comes from somewhere deeper, the kind that makes someone impossible to forget. That kind almost always comes from purpose, from the sense that a person is pointed at something real. When you are in pursuit of something that genuinely matters to you, something you'd pursue even if nobody ever found out about it, It changes everything about how you present to the world. People who are purposeful have a quality of aliveness. Their eyes are lit from somewhere inside. They have momentum, and momentum is mesmerizing. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to be moving towards something that's yours, not your parents' version of success, not your culture's definition. Yours, something that when you imagine having it feels like coming home. Here's what I want to say about comparison, because it's one of the most effective ways to make yourself miserable and invisible at the same time. Every time you compare yourself to someone else, you're making a fundamental error. You're comparing your entire interior, your doubts, your history, your private fears with someone else's curated exterior. You're comparing your chapter 3 to their chapter 27. The antidote is to change the lens. Use other people's success as proof of possibility, not as evidence of your inadequacy. When you see someone who has what you want, your first thought should be, it exists. Someone figured out how to have it. That means it can be figured out. Let their existence expand your sense of what's possible. And speaking of deserving, let's clear something up. You don't get what you deserve in life. You get what you believe you're worth and what you're willing to work consistently toward. Both, not one or the other. You can believe you're worth everything and do nothing, and nothing is what you get. You can work incredibly hard while believing you're worth very little, and you'll self-sabotage right at the threshold of success. Both parts have to be there. The belief and the work, the inner world and the outer action. When those two things align, you become unstoppable in a way that is almost eerie to watch because you're operating from complete internal coherence. Everything points in the same direction. Your thoughts, your actions, your body language, your decisions, everything says the same thing. And that coherence is what the world calls charisma. But it's not charisma, it's integrity, being whole, being the same person inside and outside. And it is available to every single human being who decides to pursue it. I want to spend a moment on what you do when it's hard, because everything I've described today is going to be hard at times. There will be days when the old voice comes back louder than ever. Days when you try and fail and the failure stings. Days when you do everything right and nothing seems to change. Those days are coming. The question is who you choose to be on those days. Your hard days are the most important days of your entire development. Everyone shows up on easy days. Your capacity for growth, your depth of character, your genuine confidence, it's all built on the hard days. Every time you choose discipline over comfort when you didn't feel like it, you make a deposit that compounds. Every time you hold your standard when it would have been easy to let it go, you reinforce a belief about who you are that eventually becomes unshakable. The hard days are not obstacles to your becoming. They are the becoming. Don't waste them by simply surviving them. Use them. Here's something that nobody talks about enough: the power of being genuinely interested in others. People think magnetism is about being interesting. It's actually about being interested. The most compelling people in any room are rarely the ones talking the most. They're the ones listening in a way that makes you feel like what you're saying is the most important thing they've heard all day. They make people feel seen. And being seen is one of the deepest human needs there is. When you make someone feel truly seen, not flattered, not entertained, but seen, they will remember you for the rest of their life. This quality costs nothing. It requires only presence, and presence is something you can practice today. So let me bring everything together. The people who others become obsessed with are not living some secret life unavailable to you. They are not blessed with some quality you were born without. They made a decision